today I'm going to be talking to you about mapping and how to create a map for this project. You should have already at least completed 3 of the 6 walks by this point, so that you can have a little bit of an idea of what this project will entail based on your walks while you're listening to this presentation. So kind of be thinking about the different things that you noticed while you were walking and what parts of those things would be interesting to create a map from. So this is a slideshow that's located in the O1 project folder, and you can follow along on your own computer with this slideshow. The other thing that's located in the project folder is going to be the project description, and you'll want to read that over to make sure that you're satisfying all the project requirements. So that's something that you can look for as well, and that's a Word document. It's called O3 description, so you can look at that as well. So let's start with the slideshow. So mapping is the charting of a particular space at a certain time in history. A lot of times we look at maps and we think that's just how the world exists, unless you're looking at a map that you specifically understand as a historical map. Usually you just think of it as a fixed thing, but it's actually not. It's always in flux. The things that are charted on that map are not always true, right? And we're going to talk about how that is the case in a couple of maps that I'll show. So I just wanted to make that note to start off with. So since maps are based off of a specific experience, then you can decide what that experience is and then create a map that's personal to your space or your life or both. So the first thing though that I want to discuss is things that typically go into maps. Your map in the end may not have both of these features, but at least wanted you to think about what usually makes up a map as a helpful way to start off thinking about mapping. So the 2 things that maps typically have are a primary and a secondary feature. And so what we're going to talk about first here is a primary feature. And the primary feature is the major organizing principle. Typically when you show a map to someone, that you want them to understand where they are, the primary feature is going to be the way that they're able to orient themselves within the map. So a lot of times that will be a transit system. Other times it'll be a nature outline, and then other times it might be a territory outline. And there's probably other ones that I haven't mentioned either, but those are the 3 main ones. And so now I'll show a few maps that use these 3 different features. So this is an example of a Google map. I'm sure you've all seen one of these. And the primary feature here is roads, which is a transit system line. And you're able to tell where you are, right? I'm right here on this map. Because, well, in this map, the place that I am is actually listed out, Dupree Arts Center. But I could also, if my specific building wasn't already signified on this map, I could tell where I was because I know that I'm at, about the corner of 12th and Columbia. So that tells me where I am. Another map that's common is a subway map or a bus map or things like that. And that is actually used as a primary feature, specifically in the subway map, because that is lines of its own, whereas a bus map typically runs off of existing streets that cars can go on as well, whereas the subway is actually its own system. So, and you can tell kind of where you are in this map based off of what if you're on the subway, which stop is being called out over the loudspeaker, or if you're located in a house that's near here, you know which subway stop is closest to your house, and so you can note to get on that, and then it'll take you to a certain spot. All right. Another way that maps are oriented is with the primary feature of a land-water outline. So this map has this big nice lagoon, and then there's even an island here, and most likely if you were staying at this, I believe it's a campground or resort, you would know where you were in relation to this island, or even the drive that goes out to these little kind of boat houses out here. So that is a nature outline. This is another older map where it's showing the nature outline here. If you were living in this town, you would kind of know which side the trees and mountains were from you, and then you would know a little bit direction-wise as to where you are. And then the other one is state outline, which I'm sure you've all seen maps of this nature as well, and you know that you're in Michigan or Illinois or wherever you are right now. And then you can kind of find yourself based on that primary political territory. All right, so we call those political territories because it's a government that has decided these boundaries. In most cases, it's not based off of some sort of nature feature, although this line is. But a lot of the states out west are just straight lines that are just arbitrary lines that were drawn across the land, and if you're actually at that line, you can't see it, right? It's not actually a physical thing that's there in that space. So political territories are one way to create a primary feature. I like to show this map as well. This is the Native American nations map, just emphasizing the point that these political territories were not always established. It was a government, it was people in that government that came in and established these lines to make that the case. But prior to European arrival, the space was kind of similarly populated in that there's a lot of nations along the waterways, along the edges of the coast, and then not as many in the center. So that's interesting. People tend to like water, so they find themselves near water, even if it's not drinkable water like the ocean. So anyways, that was just a little side note about maps being of a particular time and place and how they can represent a specific experience. And then the other thing that maps tend to have is a secondary feature. And what a secondary feature is going to be is what the map is about. Okay, so this is only present, however, if the map is about something beyond just a subway map, right? A subway map, the primary feature is the secondary feature because there is no other point to that map than getting you from one place to another. But there are other maps that have a secondary feature, and it's something to think about as a potential for your map. So topography can be one, buildings and structures can be one, and then other. So there's a lot of different things that maps can be about beyond transit system lines. But I'll show a few examples here. So the primary feature is nature shapes for this map, and then the secondary feature is topography. Here's another one where the nature shapes of the area that has been clear cut in order to create this, I'm assuming it's a fun park, I've not been here. So that nature shape outline of where those trees have been cut away is the primary feature, and then the secondary feature is all the little buildings that you would go to when you visited this fun park. And then this is a series of maps by a mapping cartographer, artist kind of person named David Woods, and he created the series of maps of his neighborhood. This is most closely related to what I'm looking for you to do in this project, by the way. And what he's doing here is, so the primary feature is the roads, and you can kind of see the roads. In some instances are just created through their, through the absence. So you can kind of see where the road lines are here. They're definitely depicted in this map of the sidewalks. And then they're sort of alluded to in the water and sewer system lines, because water and sewer system lines run under the road. And so there's a number of really interesting maps that he's created here. One is a map here of things that he found on the sidewalk, so it's like different notes that he found scrawled into the sidewalk. This is the water and sewer system, so these are these different, I'm not sure what the names of these are. So these like sewer housing things that happen underground that kind of hold water in one place until it fills up, and then it goes to the next spot, and then eventually makes its way to the water treatment plant. This is a map of all the different house addresses. So he just wrote down all the house addresses here. This one's probably one of my favorites on this sheet is the map of all the fences. And one thing that's interesting about these maps is that they're not just like, oh, here's a house that's, the address is 122 and here's one that's 125, right? What he's trying to do is, it's almost like a sociological study of the area, and it tells you something about that space, which in that sense, it's becoming art, because it's not just about the physical things that you see, but it's about a concept that's larger than that. And so that's what I'm hoping for you to do with your map, is to create a map that has a concept that's larger than just the sum of its parts. And this fences map does that in a really elegant way, and I'll tell you why. So what it's showing you is where the fences are located in this area, and which houses have like complete fences all the way around them, and which ones have just like small fences. Some areas of the neighborhood don't have fences at all, and that starts to say something about neighbors and being neighborly and being okay with sharing spaces, as opposed to on this map. I love how what appears to be the largest yard here is the one with the most complete fence. So what does that say about this neighborhood, right? Or people in general, really, is that the people with the most stuff want to hold on to it the most, whereas maybe people with a little bit less are more willing to share, and are more interested in having their neighbor be able to say hi to them instead of just putting this big fence up so that they can't see each other, right? And so that is what's really interesting to me about the fences map. Then there's another map of traffic signs. So where all the different traffic signs are. What this does is it kind of visually tells you, it communicates to you where the busy streets are, right? So these streets over here aren't going to be as busy because they don't have as many traffic signs. The traffic signs aren't necessary, right? So I can tell from looking at this map, this is probably the most busy road. And when you look at just a road map, you can't always tell what's the busy road and what's more of a side street, right? But this map, because of charting the traffic signs, you're able to tell that, and that's really interesting. And then another one is the map of all the power lines in the neighborhood, so where those go, and that it sort of looks like this beautiful, if you've ever seen images of the internet, this like kind of sprawling web, it reminds me of that. Which it was kind of the first web-based thing that was happening in physical space. Here's another one too. This is also by Dennis Woods, and he in this image he charted out where the different jack-o'-lanterns were in his neighborhood, and he in speaking about this map, he says that this area where there's clustering of more jack-o'-lanterns is actually the people in the neighborhood that are more involved in the neighborhood association as well. And so the people that are more involved in their neighborhood tend to also be the kind of people that put jack-o'-lanterns out and are more festive about a holiday where you're actually just going around and asking your neighbors for candy, right? There's kind of something neat about that. So anyways, that's another interesting way to kind of depict space and show relationships between people through the mapping of objects. And then the other thing that I like to talk about, because this can be really useful in your map, is what other features will take place on maps. So one thing is keys, and then another thing is flyouts, and I'll show some examples of that right now. So this is an example from your book. You may have seen it when we read that chapter. I'm not sure if that chapter has been assigned yet, but I love this map. It's hilarious. From a distance, it looks very cute. Like it's these little kind of stick figures, and it says, map of the area surrounding my holiday home, right? And that seems really uplifting and cute. And that's reiterated by the style of the drawing. But then you start reading what these things are, and you realize, maybe I don't want to go there, right? Like, this is a little bit like Killer Bees Slaughterhouse, right? And so it kind of has this like push-pull effect where you're kind of drawn into its cuteness, but then you're kind of repelled because a few of the things are a little bit creepy. And that's what the key is doing, right? Without this key, you would just think like, oh, nice man chopping down a tree, rather than, what was that one? Rather than an Axeman, right? It sounds more dramatic when it's put that way, right? Language can also aid in creating a little bit of intrigue or a different emotional quality in a map. So anyways, this key, what it does is it tells you some information about this map and almost changes the way you think about it. But the kind of technical aspects of a key, so it's usually located off to the side or the bottom in maybe a box of its own or a space of its own, and all the different words are equally spaced with the little icons next to them. Okay, one of the things that you're going to do for the project is you're going to make your own icons. I don't want you pulling things off of the internet for this. I want you to generate your own unique icons, so that the map is unique, so it's about you. This map is supposed to be a personal type of experience of space, so I don't want you just using clip art on there. And so that's also what's happening here is these little unique icons that have been hand-drawn and maybe scanned in or photographed. If you're interested in creating hand-drawn icons, and because you have the Creative Cloud account that you've set up, you can actually download on your smartphone, if you have one, an app called Adobe Capture. And that app will, if you just hand draw something and then photograph it, it will automatically convert it into a vector graphic that shows up in your Illustrator program in what's called your library. Okay, and if you go to the window menu, the window drop-down menu, if you go to window and then make sure library is selected, you'll be able to see those objects that you photograph and capture. So that's a really cool app. I would definitely try that out for this project. It works, it's super easy. I don't even need to make a video on how to use it because it's very intuitive. So that's a way that you could create hand-drawn things and then convert them into vectors. In the classroom, I actually have some tablets, some like drawing tablets, but unless you're near campus, you won't have access to those. So, but the Capture app works really well too. And then the other aspect of maps that students have found useful is having a flyout, particularly if you're traveling a lot and you want to make a map has multiple locations. So if you were like down in Kalamazoo and you did one of your walks, you could do like a flyout over here of that area. And then you were up in Petoskey and then you could do a flyout of that area. But a flyout is essentially it's so you can kind of get an overview of a space from far away, but then it zooms in on a particular space. The technical features of a flyout are going to be, usually there's some sort of circle or triangle or square that circles the area and then makes a larger version with that same shape, and uses like two lines to connect it on the outside. Or I've seen some students do some interesting things with kind of a triangle type shape that goes, that's maybe small at the small end and then gets larger at the large end. There's different things that you can do to connect those two spaces, the one that's been circled and then the blown up version of it. So that's the other feature that you maybe you would find useful for this project. Now, so some student examples of this project. So this was a piece from last semester. And this student created a very official looking map. It almost looks like something that Hope College would pass out to maybe visiting students or something like that. But the reason that this is a strong example is because he made these really excellent, unique icons that almost look like something that you could download from the internet, but he did actually create them himself. And they're just kind of simplified versions of different things on campus, like the different athletic locations or the different residential halls. And in doing that, he kind of called out key things. So basketball being maybe the important athletic event at Hope College. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but in his map, that's what he's saying. And so he creates a little basketball icon to signify where the athletic spaces are. And then the other one, residential. So the thing that's important that you do there is sleep. So he made a little icon of a bed and somebody sleeping in the bed, okay? And then put that on all the residential halls. The other thing that he did really nicely is he created a really lovely color scheme for this, and made it very unified by kind of rounding all the corners of the shapes so that he was able to create kind of a visual unity because all the shapes had these nice rounded edges, okay? And then he came up with this kind of clever graphic to show how to make a train track. So all these little lines, there's actually a feature if you go to Windows Stroke in Illustrator that you can make dash marks, and he just kind of messed with the settings of dashes in order to make the dashes really wide and very short, and that was how he created that. So that might be something that's interesting to do for you, is to play around with that dash feature. This is another map that I really love. There was a few things that she could have done to resolve it a little bit better, but I like how kind of strange it is. So it's of Windmill Island is here, and then the water is in here, but then it kind of has these other like different shapes and outlines to represent different things that she saw, maybe like the path of a duck as she was watching it swim around. And so then she created these individual icons of ducks that are really cute. The different kinds of ducks that you would see. Or actually these are ducks and these are geese that you would see when you're going out to Windmill Island. And then she added in some of the roads of downtown Holland over here. But I like how kind of just strange it is. It kind of plays with the foreground background. In that the water sort of seems to pop forward as the foreground thing, so that becomes more important actually than the land, which we tend to see maps where the land is more important, but in her map the water is actually more important, and she's telling us some different things about the water that are very interesting. And then the last student example here is, this one is called the Lights of Hope. I think she could have done a better job of making the key more visible, but the overall concept of the map is so elegant and lovely, and the color scheme really emphasizes the concept really well, and it's these kind of like blues that are more associated with nighttime, like nighttime blues. And then the map is about the different styles of lights that she saw around campus, and so then she created icons for each of the styles of lights that she saw around campus, and then mapped out where they are on campus. She also gave us an overview of all of Michigan so we would understand where Hope College was in this map. So really clever concept that she depicted here. So there's a lot of different concepts that you can display with your map. So feel free to be very inventive and creative with those concepts and create something that maybe in the end doesn't even totally look like a map anymore. Just as long as it has icons, right? You're supposed to be creating your own individualized icons, and it's supposed to somehow relate to the walks that you went on. So this one's a prime example of that, because it doesn't say like walk one and then a path around it, right? But she did start to notice all the different lights that were on campus while she was walking, and then created a map based on that one little thing that she noticed while she was walking. So feel free to do something like that. That would be really great. All right, good luck with your projects, and if you have any questions, please email me. I'll probably answer them in a mass email back to the class in case other people were having that same question. All right, good luck.